Hi, my name is Aaron Smith. I'm happy to join you today as we talk a little bit about some practical steps for addressing anxiety. I have entitled the workshop or this message, this little video here, for addressing anxiety specifically as opposed to overcoming anxiety or getting rid of anxiety, because I'm going to tell you right now, anxiety may or may not completely go away. Anxiety, it may be here for a while in different capacities. So instead of just trying to get rid of it, why don't we learn how to manage it a little bit better, okay? So let's see if I can figure out how to start the video on this, and we'll see what happens. I think I push this button, and then I think I push this button. So there we go. I think we're up and running. I think we're good. Okay, so practical steps, as I mentioned, for addressing anxiety. So for those of you who don't know me or haven't seen me before, my name is Aaron. I am a registered psychotherapist. That means I'm a counselor. I work as a mental health therapist for a Star Family Health Team, which is in Stratford and Tavistock. I am also a PhD candidate in the Faculty of Social Work at Wilfrid Laurier University, and I teach part-time in the School of Social Work at Renison University College at the University of Waterloo. So I know a little bit about anxiety, working with people. I know what anxiety is like for my own life as well. So just a quick review what anxiety is. So a technical definition of anxiety would suggest it's a vague, diffuse, so kind of scattered, unpleasant experience of apprehension. So we have this feeling of apprehension, but it's pretty vague, hard to pinpoint exactly what it is. And it's also accompanied by physical symptoms such as headaches, perspiration. You notice I'm sweating, it's not because I'm anxious, it's because it is a hot day in Southern Ontario right now, and I do not have air conditioning in the particular room I'm working in at the moment. But when we perspire, not from the heat, but rather from situations, that can be a sign of anxiety. Heart palpitations, that's kind of that pounding in your chest you might feel. General restlessness, difficulty sleeping, gastrointestinal discomfort, so kind of that upset stomach that we get, and some of the symptoms that can accompany that. Essentially, anxiety it's a collection of symptoms, and it's very normal. Every person everywhere has had, currently has, and or will have anxiety. And I'm going to say all three, because this is a very normal part of being human. So one of the first steps in learning to address or manage anxiety is learning how to recognize it. So I'll tell you that right now, that until you know it's anxiety and how to recognize anxiety, you're probably not going to be able to manage it very well. So one of the very first steps that I do with people is help them understand what is anxiety and how to recognize it. So you can see from this slide, I'm looking on this screen because it's a little bit too small on that screen, a number of very common symptoms of anxiety. And these are things that tend to happen in the short term. They can over the long term as well. But these are good signs, good indicators that we're anxious. We may be overthinking things, such as, let's say, a pandemic. Am I going to get it? Is my child going to get it? Are we going to have enough money? What about, the grocery stores? Do they have enough wipes anymore? Any disinfectant, hand sanitizer? We're just thinking about it over and over and over again. Maybe we try to avoid. We just kind of shut out the world. We cover our eyes, we cover our ears, and we just pretend that the problem doesn't exist. If I don't think about it, then I'm not going to worry about it. It's not exactly how it works. Sweating, as I mentioned, again, not what's going on right now. Stomach issues. So this upset stomach feeling that we get, do you know why we have that when we're experiencing anxiety? Because the blood is being pulled away from our digestive system and being pumped to the other organs in our body, the larger muscle groups, our heart, our larger organs that really can help us get out of a tight situation if we need to, which is anxiety. It can help us become aware of those kinds of situations. Stomach issues, panic attacks, and a panic attack can feel like a heart attack. It can feel like you can't catch your breath. It can feel like all kinds of awful things. And unless you've ever had a panic attack, or let me rephrase that, if you've never had one, be thankful that you haven't, because they can be pretty awful. Constantly needing reassurance. We're scared, we're worried, we're constantly needing somebody to make it better for us. A lack of patience. That's a pretty good indicator for me that I'm dealing with some anxiety. or I'm worried, I'm upset about something when I'm running out of patience. If I can't concentrate, if I'm trying to focus on this thing, but I just can't, I keep getting distracted, I keep doing other things, it's a good sign. Procrastination. A lot of people will procrastinate when they're anxious, because why would I want to deal with the thing that's making me anxious? Why would I want to address it head on? Why would I want to do that? It doesn't feel good. No, it doesn't. And so procrastination is a very common and understandable kind of response to anxiety. Constant worrying, similar to this idea of overthinking. I guess it's a little bit different, come to think of it, in that overthinking things, we might reflect on this situation and we think about it and we question it. And did I do it right? Did I say this? I should have said that. Oh, why didn't I do this? Whereas constant worrying, I'm always thinking about that thing and I'm always worrying about, are we going to be okay? Am I going to be okay? What's going to happen? What's going to happen? What are all these what if scenarios? Trouble breathing. Our breathing tends to become more rapid. It becomes more shallow. It doesn't provide those deep restorative breaths that we need. We'll talk about that one later. Headaches, very common. Rapid heartbeat, that's also related to the shallow breathing. Insomnia, guess what? People with anxiety tend to worry, and people who tend to worry tend to not sleep very well. And even if you're not worrying, maybe your anxiety is coming out in the form of insomnia. Memory issues, we forget things. We forget conversations that we've had. We forget so-and-so told us this. Why? Because our thoughts are very much focused on something else. We're preoccupied with what might be going on. Another very common sort of symptom of anxiety would be fearful thoughts, fearful predictions. Another common one would be hypervigilance, hyper-awareness. So, a very simple example of this, and I'm sure all of you can relate. 6 months ago, if you had a cough, a sore throat, what would you have thought? Probably just thought it's a cough, it's a sore throat. Maybe it's dry in here, maybe I'm catching a cold, right? Now when you have a sore throat, now when you have a cough, what do you think? Do you worry? Has that worry been there? You're hyper aware, right? So that's another symptom of anxiety. So when we talk about COVID-19 stress specifically, there's this wonderful resource that has been put out. This is not my material, my slides. This comes out of some material that was originally developed for I believe it was for the US military. And then it's been, some very good therapists have made it more specific to COVID-19. So let's just talk a little bit about this. And first thing I'll mention is that every single person is, or I would argue should be, experiencing some kind of stress response to this anxiety, to this pandemic. As we'll talk about, a healthy response is one of concern. It's going to be hard. You should recognize this is going to be hard. I'm going to be concerned and I'm going to be motivated. I'm going to do these things. I'm going to have this sense of mission. I'm going to try to move forward. I'm going to pause. I'm going to breathe when I need to. I'm going to repeat. Support other people. I'm going to be aware. I'm going to plan. You can see practicing these sorts of things mentioned on this slide. These are good things, right? It's still a stress response because this is stressful, but it's a good thing that, to respond this way. Moving a little bit away from a healthy concern-based kind of response, we're moving into more of a reactive fear-based sort of response. I'm alarmed. There's not enough to go around. You could see that. I don't like teleworking. I'm having more of a short fuse with people. I'm not communicating very well. I'm more fatigued. My performance at work, my ability to parent my kids is decreasing. Concern is starting to move into fear, and fear is starting to impact our behavior and our sense of well-being here. You can see temporary sleep issues, eating issues. Moving, again, a little bit less healthy still would be this idea of fear. It's becoming an injured sort of response. Our well-being is really starting to falter here. The behavior that we're exhibiting is not what we want. So maybe we withdraw, we're exhausted. Lack of motivation to leave the house. Increased use of numbing tools. Remember I told you, Avoidance is a very common and understandable sort of, and so is, what's the word? Procrastination, that's the word. Those are very common and normal responses and even understandable responses to anxiety. Because why would I want to dive into the thing that's making me feel so bad, right? And so a lot of people will try to numb. They'll use alcohol. Alcohol is a very effective, problematic, okay, not recommending it, but it certainly gets the job done in terms of numbing us out. A lot of people turn to recreational drug use at this point as well, because why? It numbs us out. It takes us away from this thing that's causing so much fear. It helps us relax. Just this morning, I was working with somebody and a lot of anxiety, a lot of grief, a lot of stress. So I asked, how are you coping? This person said, I smoke a joint. It's usually what I do. A lot of marijuana, because marijuana, in this case, really helps this person slow down, helps them relax. So I'm not recommending it, but I'm hoping that you'll start to understand why some people start turning towards these kinds of pieces. The final piece, and you can read through these more in depth yourself later, is this idea of absolute terror. I can't breathe. Fear has consumed me. Relationships are damaged. There is no well-being anymore. There is no self-care. I'm depressed. I can't sleep. I'm having thoughts of suicide. Complete disengagement. I'm giving up. Panic. Isolation. You can see this is a pretty wide range of responses. Now, before you look at this and you think, oh, shoot, well, I'm really I've got no hope because I'm way over here. Well, you might be way over here right now. And then tomorrow you might wake up here. And then later tonight or the next night you might be here and then there and then here and then there and then there. You're probably going to move all around. And at times you're going to find yourself slowing down. That movement will slow. And you'll find yourself kind of existing in one domain more so than the others. So figure out where you are, okay? But regardless of where you are, there's hope. There's things you can do. So I'm going to just walk you through a few things that you can do. The first thing you can do, and I'll preface all of these by saying your ability to do these things is going to largely depend on how big the struggle is, where you land on this spectrum, on this continuum. People who are more on the yellow or green side, they're probably going to be able to do more of these things a little bit more easily. If you find yourself more in the orange or red, you're probably going to struggle with them. But I'd encourage you to try them anyway. So one of the first things you can do would be to try to catch any unhealthy negative thoughts that you might have. Catch them, challenge them. Replace them with realistic. If you're a Christian, replace them with Jesus-centered alternatives. So a negative, unhealthy thought might be one such as, oh, this thing is never going to end. Never going to end. I can't keep doing this for the next 18 months until a vaccine is here. Okay. There may be some truth in some of that. I think some of it's exaggerated a little bit, but there's a kernel of truth there. So replace it instead of just with this positive, happy thought of, oh, I can do it. I'm going to be great. No, that's not realistic. Replace it with a realistic one that says, this is really hard and it's probably going to last longer than what I want. And I'm not alone. And Jesus is with me. And the Holy Spirit's here. And there's a church that loves me. And I have family that can help. And there's beautiful weather finally. You see what we mean by challenging negative, unhealthy thoughts and replacing them with realistic ones. Another thing you can do are what we would call grounding techniques. So these are very common techniques to use when you're starting to feel really overwhelmed. One of the most common ones, and often we use this in work, clinical work, we would use this while experiencing trauma. And they start to dissociate. And dissociation is not the same as anxiety. It can share some similar qualities at times, but they are different. This principle, though, this technique, this grounding technique, it can apply to both. And the idea here is when you're experiencing anxiety or when trauma has become so big that you can't really take it, it's just this big, massive, scary thing, it becomes your world. That's all there is. And a grounding technique whether trauma or anxiety, helps us by engaging our senses, and I'll explain this. It can help us understand, no, there is more to reality than this trauma. There is more to reality than this big, huge, scary thing, this anxiety. There are other realities. So to give you an example, what we can do is when we do the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, we're going to say out loud, if we can, 5 things to start with that I can see. So I'm going to look around and I'm going to say out loud, I can see my computer. I can see my desk. I can see a mouse. I can see, the light on my camera to tell me that I'm recording. Is that 4? I think that's 4. And I could see a fan on the other side of my desk because it is really hot in here. So those are 5 things I can see. And then I go through 4 things I can feel. And these can be physical things. So I could feel the chair underneath me. I could feel my shirt on my body. I could feel my glasses on my nose. And I could feel the breeze from the fan blowing at me. That's 4 things I can feel. 3 things I can hear. And this one is always a little bit more tricky. Trickier, it just takes us, we have to slow down. So I can hear the fan. I can hear some birds chirping outside. And I can hear the dryness of my mouth with the words I enunciate. Hopefully you don't hear that. That drives me nuts. Anyway, those are 3 things I can hear. What are 2 things I can smell? I can smell freshly cut grass from somebody somewhere. And I can smell wood. That's probably because I was doing some work on my deck this weekend. Those 2 things I can smell. What's 1 thing I can taste? You know what, right now I can't taste anything. And so this is a good example. If you can't smell something, if you can't taste something, say something that's your favorite. So if I couldn't smell things, I might say, you know what, I can't smell 3 things or 2 things right now, but 1 thing I can smell, or I love the smell of rather, is the smell of coffee. I'm that person at the grocery store, when I walk down, I slow down as I'm walking past the coffee and smell it. 1 thing I can taste, or I can't taste anything right now, but 1 thing I love the taste of, coffee. Or apparently I need a coffee. Or I love the taste of fresh corn on the cob. That's a good taste right there. The point here is when you go through these things, I go through the 5 senses. 5 things I can see, 4 things I can feel, 3 things I can hear, 2 things I can taste, or smell rather, I'm sorry, 2 things I can smell, and 1 thing I can taste. 5 I can see, 4 I can feel, 3 I can hear, 2 I can smell, 1 I can taste. And if you get the order mixed up, who cares? Doesn't matter. What matters is what you're doing, and by saying these things out loud, you are focusing your attention on your other senses. Remember I told you this is a grounding exercise. When something's becoming so big, it becomes that's it, our entire reality. These are 5 things, or this is an exercise we can do to remind us, no, there are other pieces of the reality around me. Does that make sense? Oftentimes, especially if you do this slowly, you'll start to feel more calm by the end of it. If it doesn't, if you start to feel a bit more calm, but not as calm as you want, do it again. Come up with 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 different things next time. Okay. Another grounding technique, I call it BBM, and that's because I used to have a BlackBerry, and if you've ever had a BlackBerry, you know those letters, BBM, BlackBerry Messenger. That's not what it stands for in this case, but that's how I learned it because it helps me remember. I've also heard it BBT and even BBB, so I'll tell you what they are though. Breath, body, mind. Or if you're doing BBT, breath, body, thoughts. Or if you're doing BBB, breath, body, brain. One of my clients came up with that, and I like that one. I still like BBM though, so that's what I'm going to focus on. What you're doing here is you just notice what's going on with your breathing. Just stop what you're doing. Pay attention to it. Just observe. Just pay attention. Is your breathing shallow? Is it rapid? Is it slow? Is it deep? Is it have a nice steady rhythm? What's going on with your breathing? Just pay attention to it. Then pay attention to your body. What's going on in your body? For me, when I start getting really stressed, I start feeling it in my shoulders, in my arms, the back of my neck. When I start feeling anxious, I feel it in my gut. So just notice what's going on in your body. Are your hands sweaty? Are you clenching your fists? What's your heart doing? What's your skin feel like? Is your body tense? Are your muscles tense? Are your shoulders raised up? You have a grouchy kind of look on your face. What's going on with your body? Just notice and pay attention to it. Maybe comment on it. Maybe say it out loud. And then mind or thoughts or brain. What are the messages going on in my mind right now? What are the thoughts that I'm having? The first time I learned this approach was from my own counselor. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. Not about my work with my counselor. I'm not going to tell you about that right now, but I'll tell you a little bit about counseling in a moment. When I first learned this, my wife and I have 3 daughters, and they're very young. My oldest is almost 6. My youngest is 2. And a few years ago, bedtime was just awful, beyond awful. It was excruciating. And for those of you who have had young children or were once a young child, and maybe you remember it, bedtime with young kids rarely goes perfectly. And it can be very stressful. And I remember when I learned this from my counselor, this technique, I remember doing bedtime and catching myself with this thought that it's just been every night for 4 years, for 5 years, whatever it's been. It wasn't 5 years, it was maybe 3 years, 3.5 years, every single night. And then I caught myself and I thought, wow, wait a sec, it hasn't been every night. It's not exactly true. Or I can't keep doing this. And then I caught myself thinking that, and I thought, no, I can do this. As frustrating as it is, it's maybe an hour each night. It's okay. So you catch those thoughts by noticing them. So that's another grounding technique that you can do, and it can help really slow things down. Another exercise you can do would be deep breathing. It's sometimes referred to as diaphragmatic breathing. Diaphragmatic breathing. This is not rapid, shallow breathing, but this is the kind of breathing where we want our belly, you can see belly breathing, our belly to actually kind of expand. And so a very easy way to know if you're belly breathing or diaphragmatic deep breathing, stick your hands on your belly right now, take a deep breath. If your hands do not go out, you're not doing belly breathing. Okay? A diaphragmatic breathing, what it's doing, the reason our hands go out, our diaphragm, which is the organ underneath our lungs, it pulls down and out. And when it does that, it expands our lungs down and out. So when you put your hands on your belly and you can feel your belly come out, you're feeling your diaphragm. If you don't, what you're doing, you're just trying to kind of suck your lungs down but not out, and it doesn't work nearly as well. So if you want to learn how to do some belly breathing, you can just look it up online, lots of resources about diaphragmatic breathing, or if you've got young kids, this is a wonderful resource for it, for your family. Go on YouTube, type in Elmo. Yes, I said Elmo, and for those of you who, like me, have young children and cannot stand that furry little red guy, watch it anyway. It's cute. Diaphragmatic, no, don't type in Elmo diaphragmatic breathing. Type in Elmo belly breathe on YouTube. Elmo belly breathe. It's a cute little song, and it's going to teach you how to belly breathe, and check it out. A couple other resources. You can do mindfulness. Mindfulness, essentially, and I know some Christians struggle with, and I'm not going to get into that right now, but what I can tell you, there is some evidence for this sort of practice in Scripture. For example, in Matthew 6, Jesus is talking about flowers in the field and birds in the sky and the kind of worry. And what's he saying? He's saying you can rest in the present, knowing that your Father in heaven is taking care of you. You can focus on and rest in this present moment. Meditation, This does not need to be some kind of weird, new agey, hippie kind of thing if you're not into that. This can be focusing on the promises of God, focusing on the presence of God. Meditation and mindfulness are two practices that can be very, very helpful as well. Some other things you can do, you could take care of yourself. Physically, eat well. Regular, well-balanced meals, regular snacks. Do exercise. Get outside if you can. Sunshine is so good for us on many levels. Get out into nature. There's this wonderful branch of therapy called ecotherapy, and it is exactly what it sounds like. The research is showing there's therapeutic benefit in just getting your hands dirty. Go stick them in the ground somewhere and dig some dirt up. Find a worm. Look at it. Whatever. There is benefit, therapeutic benefit, healing benefit in being outside in nature. Get outside, get some exercise in, go on a walk. Research has shown going on, I believe it's, oh, don't quote me on the numbers here, but I believe it's doing 20 minutes of exercise 4 times a week, something like that, is basically as effective as a low-dose antidepressant when it comes to depression. Pretty cool, right? So get out and do some exercise. Stay connected with loved ones. Stay connected with professionals. Stay connected with people in your circle. Hear their voices, if possible. See their faces, if possible. Not necessarily in person, not promoting anti-social distancing measures. What I am saying is go on a computer, go on FaceTime, go on Google Meet, go on Skype, go on Zoom, go on Facebook Messenger. There's like a million different ways to do this. If you can't do that, at least pick up the phone. And I don't mean pick it up to text or message or whatever. Pick it up and call. We know that hearing voices over the phone, hearing somebody's voice is much more effective at creating a sense of connection than just seeing words on a screen. And we know faces is even better. So stay connected. Limit your exposure to the news. I don't know about you, but it seems like every time I go to my news feed, it's just COVID-19 everywhere. That's it. That can be really overwhelming. So maybe you limit your exposure to news. Maybe try to find a way to help other people. People in your church, for example. Are there things that you can do to help them? Are there neighbors that you can help? There's a wonderful website. I encourage you to check it out. Chatting, C-H-A-T-T-I-N-G, Chatting to Wellness, I believe is the website, .ca. And what it is an organization, and they connect volunteers with seniors across Canada, older adults who just want somebody to talk to. That's it. They just want somebody to talk with. There's a client that I call once a week or so for about half an hour. And this is somebody who's older, has lost their partner, their spouse, children gone, work gone, most family friends gone. And guess what? They just need somebody to talk with. That's it. And so I call about once a week and we just chat about anything, about the weather, about the pot roast they recently cooked. We chat about whatever it is. So if you're looking for a way to help people, maybe look at an organization like that. Maybe call your pastor if you have a pastor. Call somebody at your school if you have somebody at a school or an organization. See if you can pull a group together and start calling people. Help them out that way. The last piece that I'll mention, something you can do, and then there's, well, 2 other pieces I'll mention here. Create a psychological, emotional, and or spiritual first aid kit. So this could be a literal kit, a basket, a box, a backpack that you have somewhere. Stick a note on it that says, Aaron's first aid kit, Aaron's emotional first aid kit, whatever it is. You can write notes in there to yourself. Maybe these are positive messages or things you're thankful for. Write them down and stick them in there so you can review them later. Maybe write down prayers, write down Bible verses. Throw items in there that are soothing for you. Maybe there's stuffed animals, bath salts, cozy music, a picture of your wedding day, a picture of your grandkids, whatever it is. Maybe some cozy socks or slippers. I've got the super cozy slippers. These are my Dutch grandma slippers, is what I like to call them, because my wife's grandma is Dutch and she made them. And they're amazingly comfortable. So that would be something I would put in my first aid kit. Maybe write a safety plan. Who am I going to call if I'm having a hard time? Who am I going to call if I'm starting to feel like I'm not safe right now? Two other things that you can do, or one other thing you can do, and then I'll talk about another word on this page. I mentioned stay connected with others. So get connected with a professional. There are counselors all over the place. If you can't find one yourself, call an agency and just say, how do I find a counselor? Go on Google, call your pastor. Find me on Facebook, fire off a message. I'm under Aaron Phillip, not Aaron Smith. Phillip is one of my middle names, and there's some people that when I was working in a former agency, I didn't want some clientele finding me, and I just never changed it. So find me on Facebook, fire off a message, I'll help you find a counselor. Find somebody though. When I mentioned stay connected, not just with family and friends and loved ones, but with professionals. I mentioned I have a counselor. I do. Counselors have counselors sometimes, and that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. We all need help. So find somebody and get some help, okay? The last thing I'll mention here, and then we'll close, is pray. Now, I don't know if you're watching this video, if you would identify yourself as a spiritual person, a religious person, a person of faith. I would. That's me. I would identify myself as somebody who I practice Christian spirituality is one of the ways I like to say it. I live Christian spirituality. And what Christian spirituality means, it's a phrase, it's a term that's used to describe how one person or how we as individuals and collectively can take the principles, the values, the beliefs of Christianity, and we weave them through the fabric of our lives so that they start to animate our lives. They provide the breath, the fire, the things that motivate us and just become real. And I love that idea. So for me, that's how I would say I am. I'm a Christian. I practice Christian spirituality. And I believe that there is a God, and I believe that God loves you. And if you aren't a person of faith, you might think that sounds weird. You might think I'm a bit of I've got a few screws loose here. I can tell you I'm fairly well educated. I have 2 master's degrees and almost a PhD. And I think I'm somewhat intelligent, and I'm pretty sure intelligent people can believe in God as well. So I say that tongue in cheek. I absolutely believe that. And I do believe there's a God, and I do believe that God loves you. So one thing you can do, you can pray. You can talk to him. If you don't know he's there, if you don't know God's there, say that. Why not, right? Tell God how you're feeling. See what happens. So I'm going to end this video now. If you have any comments, questions, I'm going to be posting this on YouTube as well as wherever else you've been able to see this through. Feel free to message me, and I hope you all hang in there. This is not easy stuff we're dealing with, this pandemic. So take care of yourselves, okay? Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.